Chapter 16. This is going to be a big chapter. Chapter 16, we're going to learn about the differences among various types of value. We're going to learn about the theory of valuation that appraisers go through. And we're going to explain the three approaches to valuing a property. And we're going to discuss the profession of appraising in New Jersey and the various appraiser type licenses. So we'll start off with this. What is a marketplace? A market is where goods, a place where goods can be bought and sold. Price can be established, and it becomes advantageous for buyers and sellers to come together and trade, buy, and sell these goods in one place. But real estate's an imperfect market because you can't take the goods out to the people. You got to take the people out to where the goods are. Because of that, real estate's an imperfect market. There's a lead time that takes place when the demand and then the actual product can become available. You have to acquire, builders need to acquire land, they need to get permits, they need to get financing, build it up. There's some lead time, but real estate is usually a good indicator of what is to happen in the coming, in the future as far as the economy goes. It's usually a leading indicator. So, finite, in order for land to have value, it's commonly agreed that it possesses these 5 attributes. One, it's finite in its supply, meaning no new land is being created. Whatever is there is there. It's limited in its availability. It's physically immobile. You can't pick it up and put it in a better neighborhood. It's durable. It'll last forever. You could drop a bomb on it, it'll still be there. And it has its own unique location and characteristics, right? What's one of the most important things when selecting land to build on? Location, 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 right? But it's unique in its own location, views, etc. And it's useful to people. In order for it to have value, it has to be a useful piece of land, right? So supply and demand is the amount of goods offered for sale within a market at a given price during a given time period. And demand is the number of people that are willing and able and ready to buy it during that given period. So when supply increases, prices will drop. And when demand increases, prices will rise. So this principle states that the value of a property increases if the supply of such property decreases and the demand remains constant or increases, and vice versa. That means and the reverse is possible. So value is a monetary worth of goods, products, or services offered in the marketplace at any given time. And value is 100%. Whenever we talk about value, we talk about all of it. So value equals 100%. And it can be described as the present worth of future benefits. That's the weird way of them describing that. And value does not remain the same over time. It varies as the market fluctuates. Here's a little tip for you to sharpen your valuation skills and knowledge. Instead of relying on your brokers to try to teach you how to value properties, which they may not be great at it, you could have this group of appraisers at Ottawa teach you. OTTEAU.com. They're a group of New Jersey appraisers that are also consultants for a lot of major corporations and law firms and whatnot, investment groups and financiers and whatever. Well, they put together classes for us as real estate agents too, to teach us how to value properties properly, called a CMA workshop, and an advanced CMA workshop they have available as well. These classes are usually under $100, and they give you CE credits as well for that. So I highly recommend taking them. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever, other than the fact I do take their classes myself. And I try to take them on an annual basis, if at all possible, to stay sharp and to get the information that they provide you with. It's a class to, they also have classes to update us on seasonal market conditions. So if you miss these when they're giving the CMA workshop, which they do around once a year, you could take their seasonal workshops, which they come out with every season, and they touch on CMAs, but it's not a class about CMAs. It's about the coming market, for the coming season, what is expected, and they set you up on trends and what's expected with the market forecast in the area and why. So here's the real estate value of the views during tax time. The owner looks at their property like this, the buyer like this, the real estate agent like that, and the tax man like that. But when it's time to sell the property, all of a sudden there's a switch there. Now the seller looks at their own property like that. That's how, because they want to get all that money. So value can be described as the present worth of future benefits arising from the ownership of real property. So let's highlight that. Page 304. It is important to understand, though, as this next paragraph sentence says, the value of real property does not remain constant over time. It does fluctuate as the markets do. Any shortage in housing, that could increase the value, especially if there's a demand for it. Any increase of housing, well, that could end up driving down prices. Right now, we got builders building everywhere like it's going out of style, in hopes that the borders stay wide open and we still get this flood of people coming in. I guess these investors are counting on the government overpaying for rents for housing these people using our taxpayer dollars. But at some point, that's got to end. So I think we're going to have a bit of a real estate market crash at some point, especially with interest rates going up. I suspect that if they do drop, though, we'll see an increase in prices for a short period too, though, because we got some people waiting on the fence to buy, but they're waiting for that interest rate to drop. They're waiting for the wrong thing. You shouldn't be waiting for the interest rates. You should be waiting for the prices to drop. Price is the most important thing when buying a house. Get it as cheap as possible. You can always refinance down the road, but the price you get it at, you can't change that later. So situs is people's preference for a particular location. And there's three major factors affecting value. And what are they? Location, location. Oh, what's that last one? Oh, yeah, location. So here's some resources that I have for you talking about this, where this image came from. The Oklahoma land rush. Okay, this is a historic photo. But let's highlight this. People's preference for a particular location is called situs. I like to mispronounce words sometimes so I could better recall what they mean. And I mispronounced the word situs as situs. Because once we find that perfect location where we want to build our house, we say, we're going to sit us right here, right? Okay, did everybody locate the situs and then do the highlight here on that on the top of page 305?
Got it.
So I put together this little video I created for you. Check this out. I'll also give my mouth a rest.
The Homestead Act became law in 1862 when it was signed by President Abraham Lincoln. U.S. citizens could get 160 acres of unoccupied land west of the Mississippi River and east of the Rocky Mountains. They could keep it if they lived on the land for 5 years and made improvements to the land. Around 50,000 people lined up to claim around 2 million acres of prime land. At high noon, they were allowed to enter the area and claim the land. This is an actual photo from that day, courtesy of the McClenny Family Picture Album. Homesteading was a great opportunity for many people, especially immigrants just moving to the United States. Anyone who was over 21 years old could own land. This included former slaves, immigrants, and single women. Some people snuck onto the land early and hid in order to lay claim to the best areas of land first. These people were nicknamed Sooners. Today, the mascot for the University of Oklahoma is the Sooner. Around 10,000 homesteaders settled around the area that is today Oklahoma City. The next day, April 23rd, 1889, the city was established with a population of over 10,000 people. It would later become the capital of the state of Oklahoma. Interesting facts about the Homestead Act and the land rush. Northerners wanted the land to be developed by small farmers rather than the large plantation owners from the South. They were afraid the plantation owners would use slaves to farm the land. There was an $18 fee to file the application to get a plot of land. Later Homestead Acts allowed for 320 acres in areas for dry land farming and 640 acres for ranching. By 1934, 270 million acres of land had been given away by the United States government. Homesteading ended in 1976, except in Alaska where it ended in 1986. In the book Little House on the Prairie, Laura Ingalls' dad claims a homestead in Kansas. The following is a reenactment of the Oklahoma land rush that happened on April 22nd, 1889. The movie is called Far and Away, featuring Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise.
So that,
Be sure to visit us at www.careerpathacademy.com. We're on Facebook at
so that's basically the reenactment there of what happened at the Oklahoma land rush, and it explained how the government gave away land at the beginning, where people could go and they could claim it. And they were giving away land up until the 1980s here in the United States. Now, any land that has not been claimed for private ownership is now considered government property. But the government still does auction off some land. You could find some auction sites where in the middle of the country, they do auction it off still, where you could get hundreds of acres for literally just a couple of bucks. But there's nothing out there. You got to realize there's no sewers, there's no sewer systems, no water supplies. You'd have to get your own well, build your own infrastructures and all that. But if you don't mind living out there on your own and roughing it, hey, you could buy that. You could buy hundreds of acres of lands today from the government, but you can't claim it for free anymore. So for property to have value, it must have dust, demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. Demand means that there's a need or desire by someone who can afford and is willing to buy it. Utility is serving a human need or desire. Scarcity means it's limited in its supply, and transferability means ownership should be easily transferable. An appraisal is an unbiased estimate or opinion of value based on supportable evidence using approved methods by a licensed appraiser. Now, even though we just learned about that, there are some groups out there that are trying to claim that everything is racist, including appraisals. So we have our very own New Jersey civil, what is it? the DCA, Department of Community Affairs, Division of Civil Rights. They just had the other day a seminar for appraisers in the state of New Jersey, talking about how appraisals are racist. I mean, the values are based on supportable evidence, and they can be recreated by other appraisers by looking up the comparable properties that they've used. They're not just pulling numbers out of thin air. But I guess they could pull out and find some examples, I guess, of maybe you come across a biased person that works as an appraiser, and then maybe they are trying to not give a good appraiser, and they pull a legitimate comps, but they pull the cheapest ones possible, maybe, or the most expensive ones when they're trying to paint the picture. But that's not by far the majority of the good people out there that are hard workers as appraisers, that are honest and fair. But either way, just be aware, on the horizon, something is coming out. Something is going to come out soon. Mark my words. Something is going to come out soon about appraisals being racist, and that there's going to be some kind of new regulations on appraising. And I have no idea how they're going to try to change the way that appraisals get done. But I'm sure it's going to make it more expensive, whatever the hell it is that they do. They're going to get it, so they're going to make it harder to become an appraiser, which politicians already tried doing this when they were pointing the finger after all the real estate market crashes. They pointed the finger at appraisers for overvaluing properties, even though they were using supportable evidence as comps to determine the value. They were pointing the finger at the real estate agents. They were pointing the finger at the lenders. They were pointing the fingers at the attorneys, Yeah, well, now it's the appraiser's turn, I guess, again. They're going to come back down on them hard again. So that's where we are now. Appraisers so appraising requires licensing. So an appraiser is one of those licensed professionals. They are paid a fee by the borrower. It is the lender who selects the appraiser from a list of licensed appraisers. And then they're trained to provide that unbiased estimate or opinion of value. All right, so let's do the highlights down here. Market value. So an appraisal is an estimate of market value. An appraisal is an estimate or opinion of value based on supportable evidence and uses approved methods. And an appraiser is a licensed person who is trained to provide this unbiased estimate or opinion of value and document how they come about valuing these properties. Everybody got that highlighted?
Got it.
So later on in this chapter, towards the end of the chapter, page 318 here, we're going to come across this slide again, so you don't have to turn there now and highlight it. But in order to start off to become an appraiser, because sometimes at this point people usually ask me, how do you become an appraiser? We'll get to it at the end of the chapter, but here it is right now. A beginner may earn the status of apprentice trainee after taking a 90-hour class of appraisal study and passing a successful examination. Mind you, you guys are here taking a 75-hour class on various topics in real estate, and you'll have to pass an exam, school exam and state exam, and then you can work on your own. well, under a licensed broker. So an apprentice trainee, you become an apprentice trainee appraiser after that 90-hour course and passing a state exam. And then you're basically a gopher working as an apprentice trainee under any of the other appraiser license types. Now, to become licensed as a residential appraiser, the New Jersey students have to complete an additional 150 hours of class in approved courses and have 2,000 hours of experience as an apprentice trainee in no fewer than 12 months. So you got to be an apprentice trainee for at least 12 months and have at least 2,000 hours of doing appraisals under any of the licensed appraiser types. Now, once you become a licensed residential appraiser, you still have to work under a certified appraiser. So the applicant for a certification as a residential appraiser must have an associate's degree or higher. That's one of those additional things that the politicians threw in there now to try to make it harder to become an appraiser. But is that going to make you a better appraiser, having an associate's degree or higher? An associate's degree in what? Gender studies? How is that going to make you a better appraiser? So the applicants without a degree can substitute at least 21 semester credits in specific English, economics, math, business, and law courses. The students must also complete 200 hours additional in approved appraisal courses and have 2,500 hours of experience in a period of not less than 24 months, 2 years. And then you can become a certified residential appraiser. Now, certified residential appraisers can only appraise residential property valued under $1 million. Now, any of these apprentice, residential appraiser, certified residential appraiser can appraise commercial property and land over $1 million as well, if they're under the direct supervision of a certified general appraiser, which is the highest license type, which can appraise anything. So let's highlight both licensed and, oh, you don't have to highlight it just yet, but both licensed and certified residential appraisers must pass examinations and may conduct residential appraisals of no more than $1 million unless they're under the supervision of a certified general appraiser. So in order to become a certified general appraiser, it's required that you have a bachelor's degree or higher. An applicant without a degree can substitute 30 semester credits in courses mentioned above up here, and 2 elective courses in accounting, geography, AG economics, business management, or real estate. In addition to 300 more hours of approved appraisal courses and an apprenticeship of 3,000 hours of experience over a period of 2.5 years or more. At least 1,500 of those hours, half that time, spent on appraising non-residential properties. But unlike residential appraisers, certified general appraisers have no monetary caps on the types of properties or the types of properties that they could appraise. They could appraise commercial property and land as well. In every case, it doesn't matter which type of appraiser license that you have. They all need to complete a 15-hour national USPAP course. USPAP stands for Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. And they need to take that periodically every couple of years. Now, real estate appraisers are required to undergo criminal background checks as well. But we'll see about that. Remember, you're not supposed to, for renters, you're not supposed to do criminal background checks on them. Why should you have to do it for a job then? Doesn't that make it racist to do a criminal background check on for people for employment? If it is racist to do a criminal background check for a place to live, then doesn't that make it racist to do a criminal background check on people for a job? Or are we selectively applying these rules? All right, so anyway, I put together this slide that explains all of that. minus all the different types of courses and college degrees here. You know, MAI, anytime you see MAI, that means they're a member of the Appraiser Institute. And USPAP is that uniform standard of professional appraisal practice they take. We as real estate agents, we become members of NAR. Appraisers become a member of MAI. Real estate agents, members of NAR, need to complete the Realtors Code of Ethics training class. What the Realtor Code of Ethics class is to us, USPAP is to appraisers. They're uniform standards of professional appraisal practice they need to follow. Certified residential appraisers can only appraise. Okay, so you start off as the apprentice trainee. You got to take 90-hour class and pass a state exam. Licensed residential appraisers, you take a 150-hour class, pass another exam, 2,000 hours of experience in not less than 12 months. Then to become a certified residential appraiser, you can only appraise residential property under $1 million. And can appraise commercial property, but only under the supervision of a certified general appraiser, because that's a wider scope when something is in general, right? So they could do more types of appraisals. 200 hours of class with another 2,500 hours of experience in not less than 2 years, and have an associate's degree or substitute 21 semester credits in certain topics. A certified general appraiser can appraise any property. There's no monetary caps on the value of those properties, and they must have a bachelor's degree or higher, and they could substitute 30 semester credits in certain topics. In addition to another 300 hours of approved appraisal classes, they have to have 3,000 hours of experience, with at least half of that, 1,500 of those hours, being on appraising non-residential properties, commercial properties, over a period of not less than 2.5 years. Now, if you're going to get an FHA loan and you're going to have an appraiser do an appraisal for an FHA loan, those appraisers are required to have a special designation class on their license that says they took a special course on how to do FHA appraisals, because there's certain things they need to look out for and document on those appraisals. They have to document the fact that if there's peeling paint and take pictures of that. They have to check the dishwasher to make sure that it works and isn't leaking. They got to make sure there's an oven in the, they got to look for certain levels of repair, actually, essentially making them kind of like a home inspector too. But either way, before any appraiser can appraise a property that's FHA loan is being used to purchase it, the appraiser has to have a special FHA designation on their license. All right, so if you want more information about becoming an appraiser, you could go to njconsumeraffairs.gov/REA, real estate appraising. All right. Actually, let's go there for a second. Let's click on that link. They may talk about that class that just happened. Let me see. So here's that Consumer Affairs about real estate appraisals. Assistant requires electronic notice provided. State hold a meeting on Monday, June 17th. This meeting is being conducted electronically only. Okay. So all appraisers are required to go to this. I guess you guys can hop on there as a real estate agent too. You guys can join these meetings if you want to see what's coming up. Hang in there with the appraisers. We are all invited to a webinar entitled Undervalued, the Impact of Appraisal Discrimination on New Jersey Communities of Color. There you go. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. The New Jersey Fair Housing and Industry will have a discussion on systemic racial inequalities in appraisal practices. Yeah, see, everything's becoming racial. Racial disparities in residential property appraisals, along with discriminatory housing practices, contribute to racial wealth gap, segregated neighborhoods, to inequality. See, the problem here is you have the government going after appraisers, claiming that they were the reason why the properties got so overvalued and we had this real estate market crash. And now they're saying, well, wait a minute. appraisers, you're not appraising properties, valuing them high enough when people of color are purchasing these properties. So you need to stop being racist, and you need to appraise their properties for a higher amount. So what is the practice going to be now? If the buyer is a person of color, you got to give them a higher cost appraisal. That's going to be the end up result here, so people don't get accused of racism. That's going to be what's going to happen in the end. And in the end, it's actually going to hurt people, because if you're raising the value of these properties for an appraisal, sure, they could get higher loan amounts now, but now homeowners are going to want more money for their homes in these areas. But are they going to be really worth it, or is it going to be an outside factor that's affecting the values, basically outpricing some people out of the possibility of home ownership in these areas? Because when it all boils down to it, you got to be able to make enough money to pay back these loans. You're going to overvalue these properties, make them more expensive, and then nobody's going to be able to buy them who's wanting to live in these areas, right? So anyway, that's just another angle to look at it. Okay, so market value is the price that a ready, willing, and able buyer who's not forced to buy will pay a seller who's not forced to sell. It's the most probable price that a property will bring. It's based on supportable evidence. Payment has to be made in cash or its equivalent, like a mortgage loan. It has to have had reasonable length of time exposed to the open market, and both the buyer and seller are acting without undue pressure. And both parties must be well informed about the property's assets, defects, as well as its potential. The valuation is estimated by a real estate licensee or by licensed appraisers. We, as real estate agents, we help property owners, as the sellers, as well as buyers, by doing CMAs to determine the market value of a property, the fair market value, so that we could figure out how much they should ask when selling their house, and to help buyers, guiding them on how much they should offer when purchasing a house to make sure they're not overpaying. So market value assumes it's an arm's length transaction. What's an arm's length transaction? Well, that's another term you'll need to know for exams. An arm's length transaction is a transaction between parties who are relatively strangers to one another. That means they're not very close to each other. They're definitely not related to each other, right? Each of them is going to be trying to do the best for themselves. So if it's truly an arm's length transaction, you're not going to be selling the property to your relatives. Here's an example of what is not considered an arm's length transaction. A brother sells his house to his sister. Now, pretending that let's just assume that there's no drama or anything going on here in the family. What are the odds that the brother is going to give his sister a break on the price of the house he's selling her? Is it pretty good odds?
Pretty good.
Pretty good odds.
Yeah. So you can't really use this transaction, this sale. An appraiser cannot use this transaction as a comparable when trying to determine the value of another house, because it was not an arm's length transaction. There were other factors that contributed to the overall sale price of this house. So you can't really use this as a comp when valuing other homes, because there was an outside influence by their relationship, which affected the value of that sale. So the relationship of the parties is an outside factor or force that affects the value. The brother's probably going to give his sister a break on the price, so it's not an accurate reflection of the true market value. The same can be said is if you're using as a comparable a foreclosed property or one where a short sale was done, unless it becomes to the point where that is the majority of the sales in the marketplace. Then that becomes the norm, and then you can use those types of transactions as comparables. But if that's not the type of marketplace that we're currently in, where there's a lot of foreclosures and short sales going on, you cannot use those types of transactions as a comparable because it isn't. There were outside forces that affected the value of that sale. You guys understand the theory behind that explanation there? All
Yeah.
right. So let's highlight all of these things that we just went over about market value on that slide.
Next.
Okay. Now down here, they also talk about market price. Market value and market price. In a perfect world, the market price, that's the selling price. In a perfect world, the market price and the market value would be one and the same. That means that you're good at valuing properties because whatever you valued it at, that's what it's sold for. So cost relates to the past, price relates to the present, and value relates to the future when we think about it. So market value is an estimate based on the analysis of comparable sales. It's based on solid data, the evidence, to calculate the projected sales price, the current value. Market price, that's the selling price. In a perfect world, the market value and the market price are one and the same. It's what the property actually sells for, the eventual selling price. So if we were able to estimate the market value, and that's what it ends up selling for, the selling price, the market price, hey, we're good at our jobs. Cost is the total fee to construct or make improvements, and it usually has little to do with the current value. Cost relates to the past value. It's what you spent on something. Buyers don't care what those improvements cost you. They care about the current value of the home and what it's worth now, right? They don't care that you need to recoup the money because you spent all this money to install a pool, for example. Not all improvements will pay for themselves. Cost does not equal market value. It has little to do with it. Let me back up on that for a second. Let me pause this. All right, so let me just give you a little insight here. There's that class I highly recommend you guys take, that CMA workshop from the Ottawa group. Here's a piece of information that they give us. Another reason why I like to take these classes is because they give us this adjustment guide. This adjustment guide tells us if a property is in the price range of 250, 400, 750, 1.25 million, 2.5 million, etc. They tell you how much an improvement or a location can affect its value just for those one factors, because we have to make adjustments for the differences in these properties. Now, how much does it cost to install a pool, to make a pool, an in-ground pool? Anybody know how much it costs to get an in-ground pool installed?
Like, I don't know, 100K or something.
No, that's a lot. I would say more along the lines, maybe about 35,000, give or take. Okay. But are you going to get all of that money back? Well, let's see. On a house in the price range of $250,000, let's see, in-ground pool, it increases the value by $8,000 or 3.2% of the home's overall value, whatever it's valued at in that range. Now, where do they get this number from? Well, this group of appraisers got that number from the sale of every home in that last year. They analyzed it and broke it down for the homes that sold in this price range that had an in-ground pool, as that being the only factor of difference, that it only related to an $8,000 or 3.2% price difference. Now, if you're in the next pricing range that your home is valued up to $400,000, from 250 to 400, that same in-ground pool, it's worth $12,000 or 3% of the home's value. Still didn't get back all that money. From $400,000 to $750,000 price range, that same pool, $20,000 or 2.7%. Still didn't get back all that money, but it may make it more desirable for people who want a pool, right? In the $1.25 million price range, whoa, okay, now we're talking about it, $32,000 or 3.6%. Now we're getting closer to recouping the money, but then again, if homes that are in the $1.25 million price range or above, you think that they're not going to have fancier pools that cost more to put in? So you're really not going to get back all your money for a pool. Certain repairs and improvements, add-ons and features, amenities like this, a pool, you don't get back your money on them. The things that probably pay back the most are kitchen remodels, additional bathrooms, perhaps. All right, what about if a house is on a busy road? Does that make it worth more or less? Well, as you can see right here, busy roads make it worth less. How much less, though? Well, according to this appraisal group, $5,000 or 2% less if it's in a $250,000 price range. Now, you got to look at each price range to see how much that would affect it. What if your house is within 100 feet of a high-tension power line? $3,000 less, or 1.2%. If it's on a cul-de-sac street, that means a private dead-end road, less traffic, safer for the kids, makes it less traffic noise. Well, it makes your house worth $5,000 more, or 2%. If you have a larger lot, but it's not subdividable, per acre, it'll make it worth $8,000 more. You see, some people argue about, oh, my lot's larger than the neighbor's. Yeah, only by a couple of feet, though. We're talking about per acre here, and it only makes it $8,000 more if it's not subdividable, that is. Or if it's not subdividable and it's a half acre in size more, half the value, $4,000 more, So people will argue about, well, my lot's bigger than my neighbor's. It's way bigger. Yeah, is it a half acre bigger? I doubt it. So it's not even going to account for that. What do you want to add on, $100? So age, condition, construction, remodeling, all these factors. So when you start talking about age or condition or decor because you did some remodeling, now you got to get into some complicated math formulas to figure out how they affect the price. See, this is a guide that you get, and this guide is updated annually from this appraisal group. That's why I like taking it. I just took this last year, so in December, and I got this. So it's a good class. I highly recommend you guys take it just for the knowledge. How much is. Look, how come they don't show you? They show you how much a half bath or full bath may be worth, But how come they don't show you the value of a bedroom? You notice the bedroom's not here? Because the number of bedrooms, even though they noted on the appraisal statement, it doesn't make a difference. It's the amount of square footage. Do you have more square footage in the house? Well, then we'll calculate it based on per square footage of living area. In a house in the $250,000 price range, it'd be $50 per square foot. From 250 to 400 price range, it's $80 a square foot. For homes that are between the 400 and 750 price range, you see how the different square footage values go up? So if you have an additional bedroom, well, do you have more square footage than the other house of the same architectural style? Because you could have two neighbors next to each other have the same exact house. One has 3 bedrooms, one has 5 bedrooms. Yeah, the one with the guy with the 5 bedrooms, you know what he did? He split his dining room into 2 rooms and made bedrooms out of them. But the problem is now you got, I'm sorry, the living room. But the only problem is now you got no living room because you converted them to bedrooms. So you got the same amount of square footage as the neighbor's house, but yet you say that you got 2 bedrooms more. Is your house worth more? No, it's the same square footage. And you don't have a family room now or a living room. So those are all things you got to take into consideration. See, I really like taking this course right here, and I highly suggest it just for this alone, you know. Otherwise, agents usually guess about the values of these things, you know. Well, check this out. When you take this, what about solar panels? Solar panels make your house worth more or less?
More?
All right, well, let's see.
Well, it cuts down the lights, which I guess would save you money.
Well, they don't have that listed right here because that's a separate thing altogether. They do have special energy systems here. And here, I guess here's a formula for it. Monthly savings by 80. Okay, that is part of the guide. So this is actually a separate guide that they give on that. So let me try to pull that up. I think that was in their advanced workshop. So let me pull up their advanced workshop. I think that one is in there. So in their advanced workshop, CMA workshop, let me see, let me get through this slideshow. All right, if it is if you've got solar panels on your roof, well, it depends. You know what it depends on? The ugly factor. Are those panels on the front of the house or the back? If they're on the front, are they the types of panels that blend in, like you don't even recognize that they're there? You know, and how much energy do they create? And do you own them or are they leased? So adjustments should be reduced or eliminated if solar panels are unsightly or reduce curb appeal, are more than 7 years old, or are leased rather than owned. That's how appraisers take a look at it. And then if you own them, this is how you calculate it. You take the monthly energy savings, times it by 80, and that's the increase of value, the savings. So you take the annual energy for comparable homes, annual energy costs for the subject property, that'll give you your annual energy savings, average monthly savings, and then multiply that by a factor of 80, that's $8,000 difference. Probably costs significantly more than that to put in the solar panels.
How did you know 80? Like, where did the 80 come from?
Well, they base this off of this is how the appraisers come up with the valuation of them. Because different solar panels produce different amount of energy, what kind of savings, how would that contribute to the value? This is how the appraisers, this is the formula that appraisers use for the valuation. And why is that right? How do they come up with this figure? Well, because that's how much people are willing to pay more for the houses that have them. When you start, you know, you got everybody that always screams about green energy. Oh, renewable energy, green energy, save our world, save our planet. Put your money where your mouth is. Once these hypocrites start putting their money where their mouth is, then they'll actually convert to the values being higher of homes having the solar panels. But until that happens, this is the formula, and that's how much of a price difference it's going to make. Based on people's actions and not their running of their mouths. Because there's that ugly factor. Look at this house at the top here. Isn't that ugly? See, if they blend in, you got these modern panels that blend in, they look like shingles, or they blend in decently, it may not affect it as much. And therefore, now you can calculate some savings. But if there's that ugly factor that plays a role into it, or if they're leased rather than owned, doesn't make a difference in the price. You also got that. Look, what if it's in a flood zone? How do we calculate the adjustment for flood zones? You know, all right. So this class is not going to be about this. You know, this is all copyrighted material, so I don't want to really be putting all this out there anyway. This is the take the Ottawa class from the Ottawa group. Okay, this is their advanced CMA workshop. Go to their website, otteau.com. Just giving you a little teaser here about what they offer. There's their phone number. You can call them up and take the class with them. All right. I don't want to give away their information here. I just want to share a little bit about, you know, how we come up with these valuations and how they do it as appraisers. And here, this is one of the most valuable pieces of information that they give you here when you take that course. Okay, but let's get back to it. All right, so market value, market price, and the costs. Cost has little to do with value. You know, as we just seen with the pool, costs more to put in a pool than it's going to raise the value. Does it increase the value of the property? It absolutely does. But are you going to get all your money back? Hell no. Does it make it worth more? Yes. Now, sometimes when I just ask the question to people outright, I get more than one person answering when I say, what do you think? Does a pool make your house worth more or less? Or does it make a difference? You get some people that say worth more. Some people say, no, less, because it's a liability. Your taxes are going to go up. And some people don't want pools, you know. You got to put fences up and this and that and the other thing. Your insurance will go up. Okay, well, don't confuse desirability with value. So this house is not for you then, if that's your problem, right? Don't confuse desirability with value. This house, if this house got a pool, it's not for you because you obviously don't want a pool. We'll find you something else without a pool. But for people who want a pool, they're definitely willing to pay more for it. How much more is the question. So it makes it more desirable for them, and they're willing to pay more. But are they paying what it costs to install the pool? No. So some improvements do not pay back. So cost has little to do with the current value. Nobody cares how much it costs you to do that improvement. They care about what the property's worth today. And then the highest and best use is the most profitable current use that a property can be adapted to or used for, or a use that'll be in demand in the reasonably near future. An amenity is any tangible or intangible benefit to the property. Some examples of amenities are clean air, nice views, convenience features like hot tubs and jacuzzis and pools, heated floors, having a heated toilet seat with a bidet, high-end appliances or custom features. Okay, those are amenities. You all know what a bidet is, right? A bidet, it's usually a separate appliance altogether. It's usually a separate appliance altogether in the bathrooms. but you really don't see them like that here in the United States. Sometimes they're common in Europe. In the United States, though, what has been catching on is you could retrofit your toilet to have a bidet in it, installed on it. Usually, you're not going to find houses with a separate bidet. If you do, that's definitely an amenity. It helps you save on toilet paper. Basically, it squirts water on your hiney to clean your butt, so you use a lot less toilet paper when you go to the bathroom. It's a washing device. It spritzes your booty to clean it. And in the great toilet paper shortage of 2019, 2020, during the COVID period, where people were hoarding toilet paper and the prices of it went through the roof if you could find it, bidets became a very good option. I installed one on my toilet in the house. It's basically a toilet seat that has you hook it up to the water supply, and it's got controls that you could spray water on your booty to clean your butt. Needs a lot less toilet paper to wipe afterwards, right? So those are amenities. They're add-ons, they're benefits. They could be tangible or intangible. Tangible is something you could touch or feel. Intangible is one that you don't, like clean air and nice views. Those things are definitely intangible because you can't touch them, but they are benefits to the property. Who doesn't love a beautiful ocean view or a mountain view, right? Lakeside view. So that can affect the value, certainly. Substitution is a value set by cost of purchasing a similar substitute property. So if you have two homes with the same location and attributes, the less expensive one usually sells first. The basic rule of this is nobody will pay more when the same can be had for less. Wouldn't you agree on that? If you could get something cheaper, would you be willing to pay more for it? Generally speaking, no. Why would you pay more? Why would anybody in their right mind pay more if the same can be had for less? So let's do these highlights on page 306. And right there in the margin on the side in the book, cost relates to the past, price relates to the present, value relates to the future.
I'm good.
Anybody still writing, or is everybody else good as well?
Good.
All right. So here's an example of substitution that you could see visually, so you can visualize it. If we have three homes that are exactly the same in size, style, location, amenity, the only difference to all three of these homes is the price. Which one would you buy?
Number one,
Number one, why?
the price.
Yeah, the price. It's cheaper than the rest, right? Who would pay more if the same can be had for less? That would be a stupid thing to do, right? Okay, well, you're not the only one that thought that way, and somebody beat you to it. Now, which one would you buy? See, this is the theory of substitution, that the cost increases by the purchasing of another. So somebody purchased this one already, and now your price is driven up because that's the only one left. That's the next cheapest one. And now if somebody beats you to that, well, now we have a situation of supply and demand, because there's only one house left, and now we're going to start having bidding wars on it, right? So this one will probably sell for even more than 310. So supply and demand, the value of the property increases if the supply decreases and the demand increases or remains constant, and vice versa. Texas got big. The conformity says that the neighborhoods tend to be more stable in value when the properties in them are conforming to one another. You don't have an apartment building next to a one-family house, next to a four-family house, next to a two-family house, next to a commercial storefront, next to an industrial place. You know, if everything is uniform in the neighborhood, values tend to be a lot more stable. That's why you want a property that conforms to the neighborhood. It never pays to have the best house on the block. If you have that mansion in the middle of a neighborhood where there's no other mansions, you're never going to get your money back. So non-conforming structures like that don't maintain their value as well in the neighborhood. Regression is a theory that says that values drop when the neighborhood around you falls apart and homes are not maintained, right? If everybody's getting foreclosed on and the values of the homes are around you are dropping, even though you're maintaining your house well and your house is beautiful and you've been keeping up with it, well, the theory of regression says that if everything around you is falling apart, no matter how nice you keep your property, your value is going to fall as well. Because who's going to want to live in an area that's fallen apart, right? The same thing goes for progression or progress. That's when your value increases. Maybe your house is the big piece of junk on the block, right? But everybody's improving their homes around yours. Well, your house is going to benefit because there's a demand now for that neighborhood, and the values are being increased by the work everybody's doing to their homes around yours. So this is the theory of regression and progression, that all ships rise with the tide and all ships fall with the tide. It works on the basic same concept as the tides, right? You guys can visualize that, how when the tide comes in, all the ships rise, and when the tides fall, all the ships fall the same with the water level. Well, the values of property in neighborhoods tends to work the same way. If your neighborhood is going up, all the homes in it will go up, even those ones that aren't well maintained. And if the neighborhood is crumbling, even if you're maintaining yours, well, your value is going to go down regardless. Sorry. It's just what happens when the neighborhood starts to fall apart, right? The values go down as well. Anticipation. Anticipation shows that values can be affected by anticipation of something happening in your neighborhood. Whether it's new industry moving in or out, or improvements that may be proposed, or market changes, etc. But that's basically gambling. Have you guys heard what they're building down the block over here from me? You guys hear about that yet? That's anticipation. You guys thinking about it. No, what are they building? All right, that's anticipation. Anticipation, that and excitement or angst about whatever is going to be built, that could affect the values of property. Here's an example of that. Years ago in Linden, in a town that I live in, they were going to build a NASCAR racetrack. In anticipation of that racetrack getting built, people were tripping over each other to buy previously worthless property that was swampland. It was marshland, wetlands, over by the Arthur Kill. Now, they got all the approvals to build it. But NASCAR wouldn't sanction a race to one NASCAR race there. And because they didn't sanction a racetrack without a NASCAR race does not a NASCAR racetrack make. So therefore, they scrapped the project. The project was going to be a big deal too. I mean, we're going to look at the article here. This was the old GAF site. So that NASCAR racetrack, in anticipation of that being built, they were even going to build an exit directly off the turnpike right into Linden on Wood Avenue, if you're familiar with the area. This would include a 100,000 seat grandstand, expandable to 140,000 seats. The racetrack would be a 0.92 mile speedway in accordance with NASCAR regulations. A 400,000 square foot entertainment center was going to be built, along with a 20-story hotel and conference center. Now, you had all kinds of politicians and celebrities involved with trying to push this. Morton Salkind was the developer. You had celebrities like Paul Newman and Mario Andretti, race car driver, and the political Democrat activist James Carville. You know, you had all these people that were pushing for this, but they scrapped the project at the old GAF property in Tremley Point section of Linden. This was going to be a $401 million project that the city council approved. Because any place where a NASCAR racetrack actually gets built, there's huge booms to the local economy. But that project never got off the ground because NASCAR did not approve one NASCAR race to be built there, so it was scrapped. But in anticipation of that track getting built there, you know, people bought the property all around it. Now today, what did they do with that old GAF site? Well, the city council recently, a couple of years ago, maybe about 2-3 years ago, they approved a warehouse distribution center to be built there now. So now the largest warehouse distribution center on the East Coast of the United States is being built on this property. So they're basically paving it all in concrete, trying to make a big distribution center there, I guess, and then have some docks coming there which ships directly to them. So increasing and diminishing returns. If you have a house that has a kitchen that's in desperate need of remodeling, it's unusable the way that it is because it's in such crap condition and shape. Any money that you put into building a kitchen, you're going to get every penny of that back up to a certain point. You could start going extreme with your kitchen makeovers and putting all kinds of amenities to the kitchen, that the more money you dump into it after a certain point, it's going to be nice and they're nice features, but you're not getting your money back for those things. Not everybody needs a 100-bottle wine cooler in their kitchen, or the soft touch drawers in the cabinets. All of these things add to the cost, but do they translate to more value? Not necessarily that you're going to get it all back. So the theory of increasing and diminishing returns is basically this. You start off with a kitchen at a base point like this. Any money you put into it, you're going to get all that dollar figure back up to a certain point. But then when you start going extreme in your kitchen makeover, over that amount, your return starts diminishing. You keep dumping more money in that you're not going to get it all back. So you get all your money back to a certain point, but after that point, your return starts diminishing. You're not going to get all that money back. Contribution. Are you putting any money back into your property? How are you using that money on the property? All these things can affect the value. Additions can increase the value. Absence of any improvements can decrease it, especially if it's in need. What about competition? Well, let's think about this from the perspective not residential, but a commercial property, right? Profits attract competition, but excess profits can attract ruinous competition. So if you've got an idea to build a fast food place in the middle of a neighborhood, a work neighborhood with a lot of commercial properties, but there's no place to eat in the area. If you create a place to eat there in the area during lunchtime where all the workers can go locally to grab a nice bite to eat, you're going to get a lot of business. You're going to have a lot of profit. That profit's going to catch the eye of other possible competitors that are going to want a piece of it. I mean, just take a look at McDonald's. Anytime they build a McDonald's there somewhere, what do they usually put right next door or across the street from it?
A Wendy's, like a Burger King.
A Wendy's or a Burger King goes right next door, and then a Taco Bell, and then right. So excess profits start to attract ruinous competition like that. And then now your profit margins start to go down. So change affects values as well. So we got to be understanding the theory of change. Change in the local market conditions, change in the job markets, change in the political environment, regulations, over-regulation, crime rates, taxation. Taxes can affect value. I just read yesterday that our governor, on his way out, our lame duck governor, he's proposing one of the largest commercial tax increases for businesses in New Jersey. What do you think that's going to do? What do you think that's going to do for the businesses? Is that going to attract people to open new businesses and move their business to New Jersey?
Yeah.
You think it will increase taxes?
I thought the opposite.
Yeah, probably
Thought
the opposite. Yeah, the opposite's going to happen there. These are our politicians. These are our political leaders. This is what they're doing. Are they doing the best thing? So these are things that we need to take into consideration when determining values. So crime rates, taxes. Look at what's going on in New York City. Look at the crime going out through the roof. What's happening to the values of properties? People are leaving the state. People are leaving that area, because the political environment, they're not enforcing the law enforcement, right? When you allow people to steal and rob and beat people, and then the prosecutors let them off without without charging them for crimes. Is this a safe environment where you'd want to raise your kids or feel safe and comfortable having your wife and your daughter walk the streets? You know, it does make an effect, and people flee the area. Why do you think places like Texas and Florida have seen such a massive immigration from states like New York and California? California is a gorgeous state, or at least it used to be. It's got that nice weather and everything, the sunny state. For the first time in history, we're seeing huge amounts of people fleeing the state. Now they claim, yeah, well, we're getting a lot of people that are coming here replacing them. Yeah, but who are you getting? You're getting the dregs of society because you're legalizing drugs left and right. You're allowing homelessness to run rampant. You're providing homes to illegal immigrants and giving all kinds of money and benefits for people who commit crimes or are here illegally. And everybody else who contributes to society, you're penalizing. You're charging them higher taxes, increasing taxes. This is why that governor, he's going to be out. He's going to be out soon. I don't even know why they kept voting him in there for all the crap that he's been doing. It's insanity for voting for that stuff. But that's sometimes the extremists on one side. They like to be around. They love their extremes. But when it starts affecting their own personal family, that's when they get out of Dodge. Look at all of these actors and actresses. They're selling their houses. They're getting the hell out of the country. Or moving to different areas. They can afford to. Some other people, they're trapped there. They may not be able to sell their house because who the hell is going to want to buy it in that crime-ridden, high-taxed area, you know? So weather, change in weather, flood zones and flood zone remapping, the local economy changes, these things could affect the area. If a industry moves out of an area, we have towns that become ghost towns, population zero in the United States. Remember, back in the day, we had a gold rush. People moved out west. You had these towns that were built up overnight. The gold is gone, people abandoned them. Now population zero, you know. But you don't have to go far that back in history. Just take a look at Detroit, Michigan, right? Detroit Motor City, right? Where all the big three automakers were at. All right. Through all the government regulation and red tape and overtaxing and ridiculous regulations, it was cheaper for those auto manufacturers to move to a different area. And they said, hell, if we're moving to a different area, we might as well just move out of the country and get stuff done way cheaper without all the regulations or requirements for the employees and taxation and all this stuff. We're going to go and we're going to open a factory in Mexico instead. And that's exactly what they did. So political environment can affect that. What are the politicians doing? Well, they're creating these taxes. They're creating an environment that's not overregulated, that's not conducive for businesses to be there. They'll just pick up and they'll move. So you got one political party that tells you that that's going to happen, and the other one is like, that's not going to happen. And then it happens. Then they move out, and then the place becomes a slum. Starts to become overridden by gangs. Houses, entire neighborhoods get abandoned. Then you've seen a couple years ago, Trump went to these places, former President Trump went to these businesses, and he told them that he'll work on tax breaks and all kinds of things to try to benefit them. He worked with the governors and the mayors in these towns and states to try to entice them to come back. Some of them actually did come back. But then he's out as president. They reversed everything that he did. And now some of these places are wanting to shut down again and move the hell out of the country again. You know, so as you could see, it does play a difference. So these are things that it's not just about the condition of the property that affects value. There's a lot of different factors that play into real estate and the value of real estate. Contamination. right? The ground's contaminated. That could affect the value. All right. So let's go over the three approaches to value. We have the sales comparison approach or comparative approach, where we do a CMA, comparative market analysis. There we go. Got it out. The CMA. That's how we as real estate licensees help buyers and sellers value properties. Appraisers use the sales comparison approach as well. The cost approach, and then we also have the income approach. So the cost approach is used to determine the value of special purpose, unique, one-of-a-kind properties, or ones that don't generate income or have comparables. The income approach is an approach to value that's used to determine the value of any property that generates income. So we're going to go over each one of these in detail, but in the meantime, let's just highlight on page 308 here, sales comparison approach, the cost approach, and the income approach, because just that alone, you need to know what the three approaches to value are for exams. What are the three approaches to value? That in itself, you need to know for exams. So, the sales comparison approach. This approach is most often used by real estate brokers and salespeople. Let's highlight that. Actually, we could even highlight more than that. I assume that you guys study from my notes as well. I should not do that. So we're going to highlight here. Sales comparison approach, also called the market data approach, is an estimate of value that's obtained by comparing the subject property with recently sold similar properties that we call comps or comparables to determine their value. I'll have better definition on my own slide when we go over these things, but this is the definition, the best definitions we could highlight here in the book. So the sales comparison approach, or CMA, is most often used by real estate licensees. I advise you guys to take that CMA workshop from Ottawa, OTTEAU.com. It's best for residential property valuation. It compares a subject property to similar comparable properties that we call comps for short, that are similar in size, style, location, amenity, and condition, that have recently sold. You compare them to the subject property you're trying to determine a value for, to make adjustments for the differences to determine its value. And you should have a minimum of 3 comps when determining the value of a property. You should have a minimum of 3 comparable properties. So then we're going to make adjustments for the differences on these comps. We're going to adjust for the time. When did it sell? 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago? We may have to make adjustments for the market change, because market conditions are changing all the time. They fluctuate. Value doesn't remain constant. It changes with time as well. So we may have to make adjustments for those differences, because if we're comparing it to a property that sold a while ago, well, what was the market condition then and how has it changed since? We're going to have to make an adjustment for that time. And that's a little bit of a complicated one to try to figure out. The location should be relatively the same, definitely in the same municipality and neighborhood if possible. The physical features and conditions should be similar. If not, make adjustments for those differences. Now, how to make adjustments and knowing how to make those adjustments would be like using a chart like this one that I showed you from the Ottawa Adjustment Guide, right? And then also looking into their, they have a slideshow. Their slideshows teach you a lot about the valuing of properties too. They have a great slideshow here, and they share all this stuff with you when you take their, look at this: substitution, progression, regression, cost versus value. These are all things that I just went over with you. But they show you and explain to you in detail on how you should go about applying these things. Tax resources, all this stuff, which this one actually has changed. So they're going to have to give you a different one. So this probably will be updated a bit. But they give you all kinds of statutes and laws and things that they take into consideration when valuing properties. So this next class that they give ought to be interesting when they take into consideration what the new social justice effect is going to have on these on valuation of properties. That they use for going after appraisers right now. They're going to have to take into consideration a race, I guess, now when valuing properties. So it's not just going to be a matter of comparing a property and using comparables. Now you're going to have to look at the race of the person and I guess take that into consideration. I don't know exactly how they're going to do it, because right now they're not supposed to. And they're claiming that appraisals are racist. So I don't know what they're going to be expecting of them. It's one thing to make the claims. It's another thing to how are you going to propose a change? What do they got to do? You're going to tell them not to look at somebody's race? Well, they're not supposed to right now. So that means that your whole argument is based on a few minority of maybe racist people that are doing something wrong. So go after them. Don't change a whole industry because of that, because of the few minority people that are doing bad things. Go after those people. The whole premise is kind of nutty because it doesn't take into consideration common sense. All right, so let's see the let's see, you're comparing them. Okay, so you're going to adjust for time, location, the physical features and condition, and if they're not similar, make adjustments if they're in better or worse condition. You're making adjustments to the comparables, the ones that have already sold, because we're trying to determine the value of a subject property, so you're not going to be making any adjustments to that. We know what the sold properties have sold for. So now we have a range of the pricing right off the bat, from the cheapest to the most expensive home that is just sold. Now what we're going to do is we're going to need to have and make adjustments for the differences in these properties to the subject property. And basically, if the subject property is missing a feature or it's in a worse or poorer condition than the comparable, you're going to subtract from the value of the comparable to bring it to the same level as the subject property. We're trying to pretend that if these properties that already sold that we're using as comparables were exactly the same as the subject property, how much would they have sold for? So we're going to make adjustments for the differences in condition or features. And if that subject property has a feature or is better condition than the comparables, we're going to add to the value of the comparable to try to bring it up to its same level. So here's a way I could explain this, I guess. Here, if you have a subject property, right? That's the one we're trying to determine the value for. It has 4 bedrooms and 2 baths. The comparable property has 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. So the only difference is a 1 bedroom. We're going to have to try to figure out the value of a bedroom. And then are we going to add it or subtract it from the comparable's value to bring it to the same level as the subject property? We're going to add it to the value to bring it up. So we're going to pretend that it also sold with 4 bedrooms. So we know what it's sold for. We're just going to add the cost of a bedroom because the subject property has 1 more bedroom than the comparable. So we're going to add the value of that bedroom to the to the comparable to bring it up to the same level as the subject property. And now we know what that subject property should sell for. However, we need to use more than 1 comp. We need to have 3 comps at least. So we're going to have at least 3 comparable properties so that we get a more accurate picture here. Okay, so what about condition? If the comparable property was in better condition than the subject property, we're going to have to put some sort of a value to that condition and then subtract it to bring it down to the same level as the subject property. So if the comparable property has a feature that the subject property is missing, we subtract to bring it down to the same level. If the comparable property is missing a feature the subject property has, we're going to have to pretend that it has that feature, add that to its value to bring it up to the same level. You see what we're trying to do? If you don't have these sheets of paper, you could just go like this with your hands. You know, if they give you a question on exams and they say, okay, here's your subject property and it has 4 bedrooms and the comparable property only has 3, don't put it at the same level. Say, okay, well, then it has 3. It's missing a feature. So then that means we need to add to its value. So we're going to have to figure out what that feature's value is and then add to it to bring it to the same level. That's what we're trying to do. Do you guys understand the concept of what I'm trying to have you do here?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's basically the key, is understanding the concept of what it is I'm trying to do. You don't need to know right now how much the value of this or that is. Right now, I just want you to understand, when do you have to add to the value of a comparable property and when do you need to subtract? Okay, you're trying to bring we know how much the comp sold for. It's already sold. Now we're going to compare it to this subject property we're trying to determine the value for. If it's missing a feature, we figure out what the value of that feature is, and we add it to the value, bringing it up to the same level. If it has a feature that was better than the subject property, or is the subject property's missing, we figure out what that value is, and then we're going to subtract to bring it down to the same level. That's the idea. That's the whole concept. If you guys understand that concept, the rest is easy. Just know when to add or subtract. As far as real life scenarios go and how do you put a value to something, well, like I said, you take that Ottawa class, they'll give you a guide and you can know how to place values a little bit better, other than just guessing and trying to take an educated guesstimate like a lot of real estate agents do. And then they're wondering why they're so off compared to the appraisals that appraisers do. And then they say, oh, the appraiser's appraisal was so low. No, yours was just too high because you didn't do an accurate adjustment for the differences in the properties. So here's a chart that shows you when to add or subtract from the comparables value. We have the subject property we're trying to value, and we're only going to examine bedrooms and bathrooms, architectural style, and garage spaces. In this case, we're not going to make any adjustment for architectural style because we were able to find 3 comps. They all have the same architectural style. The comps are properties that have recently sold. So we have comp 1, 2, and 3. And the price range here is actually kind of narrow to begin with. Usually the price ranges are much wider scope than this. We're not usually making such tiny adjustments either. The adjustments we usually make are usually $5,000-$10,000 at a pop, you know? So we have a price range now between 320,000 and 320,000. So it's only a $20,000 price difference. That's not much at all. Usually we have a much wider range than that. We got to come down to a more narrower scope to get it into such a tight range. But either way, we're going to still try to make this a more accurate appraisal here or valuation. So the subject property has 4 bedrooms, and these 2 comps have 4 bedrooms. This one only has 3. So we're going to have determine how much a bedroom is worth, or the square footage of that bedroom. All right. And over here, I'm going to tell you just outright, we're going to say that we're just going to estimate that it's at $5,000. So for 1 bedroom, the only difference is only $5,000. Are we adding or subtracting to the comp one's value of the value of a bedroom? We're trying to bring it to the same level as the subject property. Are we going to add or subtract that 5,000 to the comp's value? We're going to add, because we're trying to bring it up and pretend that if it's sold and that was the only difference, then this house would have sold for $5,000 more. Now, when it pertains to bathrooms, the subject property has 2.5 baths. The first 2 comps have only 2, and the third one has 2.5. So for these 2, we're going to have to figure out the value of a half a bath. Over here, I'm going to tell you outright, it's $2,500. So we're going to add a half bath to the sale price that these already sold for. When it comes to garage spaces, this one doesn't have a garage. This one has 1 car. This one has 2 cars. The subject property had 1. So we're going to have to make adjustments to the comp 1 and comp 3. If each garage space is worth $10,000, well, we're going to add $10,000 here because this one doesn't have a garage. And we're going to have to subtract a garage space from this one, the value of 1 garage space. So we're going to subtract from this comp's value. So now, if those were the only adjustments that we're going to make, we have to tally up all the additions and subtractions from and get a grand total, and then do those additions or subtractions from the sale price, what it actually sold for, to get a more accurate, narrower range. And now we do. Now we tightened up that range a bit. We got 2 comps that sold for $317,500 and 1 that sold for $310,000. So the price range that I would suggest would probably be closer to $317,500. But we have a tighter price range here. And that's how we make the adjustments to the values. Okay, everybody see how that was done?
Yep.
Any questions on that? Excellent. All right. So what we're going to do now